Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to disaster recovery, business continuity, emergency management, COVID, and anything relatable to those topics. Today, I wanted to touch on something that's been cropping up quite a bit in articles and trade publications with regards to business continuity, and that is the new operational resilience or resilience in general initiatives that are going on right now just a rebranding of business continuity? That's an argument that's going on quite a bit, and I wanted to give my 2 cents on that. I recently read an article that was published by a reputable vendor and a senior person at this organization, and I read it. It was not very long, a page and a half, 2 pages at the most. Had to do with resilience. Okay, resilience is this, resilience is that. You need to do this, you need to do that. Here's your considerations, et cetera, et cetera. And as I got to the end, I went, you know what? I've read this before. I swear I've read it before. Maybe not the exact article and exact words, but all the commentary that was in there being portrayed to professionals. And I got an idea. I reread the article, and I took out the word resilience and I put in business continuity. And I read it that way. And it read no different. I think some organizations, especially vendors trying to promote resiliency services now, are rebranding. And they're moving away from business continuity, and all their marketing materials and articles they're writing, the message is exactly the same. They're just replacing business continuity with resilience. If you're able to do that, they don't have an idea of what resilience is. There's other podcasts here that I've got on the show that get into resilience, operational resilience, and organizational resilience in much more detail. So if you want to check those out, I'm not going to take some additional time here for that. However, with the rebranding, because resilience and operational resilience and organizational resilience is relatively new in the last year or two, especially with COVID, even though there was talk about it beforehand, it's really come to the forefront now. Any organization that turns around and said, we've been doing organizational resilience for 20 years. Well, no, you haven't. Because 20 years ago was Y2K, and organizational resilience never came up. I know, I went through Y2K. I was a BCM professional back there, and that was not something brought up there. So right off the bat, nobody has 20 years experience in organizational resilience or operational resilience. No one. And I wouldn't believe them if they said they did. They're just rebranding themselves because a few interesting things happened during COVID. There were many postings by and surveys done by vendors, by just people on LinkedIn, organizations that came right out and said they didn't look at their BIAs, their business impact assessments, when COVID started. Yet for the last 20, 30 years, we've been saying a BIA, actually not 30 years because BIAs came out in the mid-90s, so 20 to 25 years, that is the foundation of all programs. And yet here we have the biggest disaster we've all faced, in our lifetime, let's say, because it's global. And very, very, very few were coming out and saying, yes, they looked at their BIAs. So nobody looked at their BIAs. Their continuity plans, a lot of people didn't look at continuity plans because COVID started out as a human resource situation. So it was being managed through policy changes with facilities groups, making sure things were being cleaned and they're limiting access to different areas of organizations until they got to the part where the one contingency that wasn't a contingency plan was to send everybody home. And for the most part, that's exactly what happened. There are obviously instances where small groups had to stay in an office environment simply because of the nature of what they do, printing checks, counting money or things like that. Obviously, they're not going to send those things home. So these people had to be in an office environment. But for the most part, a lot of others were sent home to work. That's the contingency. Well, it's not a contingency anymore, by the way, because that's now the norm. So that contingency is out the window for now, anyway. So now that a couple of the key cornerstones of business continuity management were barely looked at, suddenly we need to show value because we weren't showing that value beforehand. Now we need to do it in a different way. So it seems, let's just take business continuity management out of our articles, out of our descriptions, and just put in resilience. And for the most part, it's turning out to be operational resilience. And I will have another podcast on operational resilience and organizational resilience. So you can check those out. But it seems as though we're just rebranding now because we didn't do a good enough job with our business continuity management processes. We kept focusing nonstop on response. Here, identify all your key processes and what you do. And then we'll build contingencies to respond in case any of those things are interrupted. And that's it. Then COVID came along and our people were still available. Our facilities were still available. Our systems were still available. Our communities were still there. Yet everybody was impacted. Go figure. So it seems we missed the mark focusing too much on scenarios, fires, floods, and an impact to either our people, places, or things. One or two of those, or if not all three, have to be impacted for us to actually really talk about and understand business continuity management. Yet here we are after a global pandemic, and all three of those were available. Our partners were available for the most part, experiencing the same thing. And business continuity didn't have that in its methodologies, in its thinking, in its scope of risk. So now, to fix that, let's scramble and rebrand. We'll call everything operational resilience now. But operational resilience is more than business continuity management. So it's really interesting. Be careful. If you can read or hear something that's talking about operational resilience and just replace that with business continuity management, or the other way around, read something with business continuity, operational resilience, replace with business continuity management, then that's just rebranding. That's all it is. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave a message and let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about something related to business continuity, disaster management, COVID, personal well-being, anything that's relatable to those subjects, you can reach me through my LinkedIn profile, which is in the video description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. In the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.